Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty hefty topic in terms of healer philosophy, healer damage requirements, healer healing requirements, especially in Mythic Plus content, because there has been quite a few changes in the design philosophy when it comes to healers. I was going to make this video a little bit earlier, but they have announced at the start of season 1 that they're going to effectively increase the damage that the tanks take, and this blue post was received, how do I say, there were quite a few different opinions on both sides. No one really agreed whether this is going to be good or bad towards the Mythic Plus meta. In beta, I've done a lot of beta keys and things like that. I knew that the healing requirement is going to be high because they did announce that they're going to increase player stamina by 40%, but also creature damage by 40%, which meant that you can no longer, again, depending on which healer you're playing, topple people with a single GCD. So it's easy to see that Blizzard is actually doubling down on this kind of design philosophy. They want healers to heal. They want healers to feel, or at least if you're rolling a healer, you should be doing a lot of healing, and the best healer should be perceived as the one that provides the most HPS or can topple people. This is a very stark contrast from something like Shadowlands, especially in Season 3, where the whole meta or healer meta revolved around which healer can provide the most damage, whether it's going to be indirect or direct through things like PI and things like that. It was all about, hey, healers will have some healing to do, but a lot of your power is coming from the fact how much DPS numbers can you put out. And I guess Blizzard didn't like that, because right now, if you're doing any Mythic Plus content right now in Dragonflight, again, I want to hear your opinions about your experiences so far as a healer in puck situations and organized group situations. But right now, if you're doing keys, you can notice that healer is really mandatory. You cannot, again, I'm doing this as an example. In Shadowlands, if I died as a healer, the group would probably still continue with the key. They would still do trash packs and things like that, because they would be like, hey, it's fine, we have defensive buttons, we have self-sustain, we can do this trash pack without the healer. Now, if you die as a healer on a certain trash pack, the whole party stops, because the next trash pack, if you don't have a healer, everyone is going to die except maybe a tank. And this is extremely evident in dungeons like Ruby Life Pools, in No Hood Offensive. These are some of the dungeons where the burst healing requirements are insane, and especially if your party does not interrupt or stun or use their CC or defensives, you're going to have a very bad time. So what is the point of this video? Well, the point of this video is to talk about this change, because this is a big shift in terms of how a healer looks at a Mythic Plus dungeon. All of a sudden, again, there are packs, and the packs are going to be a lot easier if people interrupt and use defensives, but there is unavoidable damage that will be taken by the group that you need to meet the HPS or healer check. Of course, this has made my pugging experience, how do I say, I'm relatively scared to pug certain keys right now, because hey, if the group doesn't use interrupts, if I don't use interrupts, if the group doesn't use defensive, CC and things like that, I am scared doing certain trash bags, doing certain bosses, because I know I have to have healing cooldowns. I know I need to play really well. There's a lot of stress on the healer right now, and this is, how do I say, enhanced if the group does not play well. And is this a bad thing? I don't think so. I actually feel that right now a healer feels like a healer. There is a lot of emphasis on the healer role. I think one of the things that are going to make your group succeed is a good healer in your group. In Season 3, in Shadowlands, this was less evident. I'm not saying that a healer was irrelevant, but if a healer didn't have a lot of healer checks and the best healer was perceived in Shadowlands as the healer that provides the most damage, it wasn't as impactful as it is right now, because you cannot do certain dungeons without a good player or a good healer who knows when to press their cooldowns. So let me know, guys, how you feel about this shift. Right now, again, a lot of people assume that I do dungeons with a set group. I do play with a set group, especially on the first day of the release, and we're doing like 13, 14 keys, and honestly, they felt pretty hard. We didn't have the gear, we didn't have the tier sets, and there were a couple of trash packs were really annoying to deal as a healer. But I also tend to pug a lot of content. I also tend to do a lot of, like, for example, right now doing plus 11s, because you're getting good mats out of it, and 11s are not too hard to pug. I've been doing a lot of them, and honestly, I am, like I said, I mentioned in the video, I'm a little bit scared about doing certain dungeons. I don't like Ruby Life Pools with a pug. I don't really like No Hood Offensive if people don't know how to deal with certain bosses. And again, there are certain trash packs in that dungeon where you need to put like 50, 80k HPS. So guys, let me know how you feel about this shift. Now, let's talk about DPS and healer damage. And I know people straight away are going to be, hey, MadSkillz is talking about healer damage. You only have to do healer damage if you're doing organized content, if you're doing it with a set group. I don't fully agree with this. Again, people think that I run with a set group. I don't always run with a set group. I do a lot of poke content and things like that. I do believe that every single healer should provide some sort of damage no matter how bad your group is. It is not impossible, for example, to apply Sunfire and Moonfire when you're going to a trash bag. Again, if you're playing Preservation Evoker, if you're not pressing Fire Breath, you're kind of memeing. Fire Breath also heals people and it's insanely powerful. So I feel that no matter what group you're in, as a healer, you should provide at least some sort of DPS. I'm not telling you to go into feral form, waste the GCD, apply bleeds and stuff like that when your whole party is dying. I'm not saying that. I'm basically saying that if you know the damage patterns of a group, you can always apply a little bit of damage as a healer, because otherwise there will be moments where you don't have to do anything and it's going to be a little bit boring. And I'm saying this because I've experienced quite a few comments in the last couple of videos where I talk about healer damage and people almost get offended about it. They almost say like, hey, you're not supposed to do damage at all if you're doing poke content and stuff like that. I do a lot of poke content. A lot of healers do healing through damage. You always, how do I say, you should never have an excuse to do absolutely zero DPS in a key. And again, guys, let me know how I feel about this. I get the side of, hey, I rolled a healer, why should I do damage? But the fact is, the meta and everything has changed since Classic. You should be doing some damage, but this is a big but, and I hope people are not going to think this is a hot take or be offended by this. I want to iterate. I did not enjoy Shaman's, especially Season 3, where the best healer was the healer that provided the most damage, whether it was direct or indirect. I did not enjoy that. I do not think that the best healer should be determined by which healer provides the most damage. I want healers to heal. I want healer checks. I want the healer to feel like an important part of the Mythic Plus team. I want people to be like, hey, this guy is a good healer. Let's add him to the list. He's gonna carry this dungeon. This is what I think a healing role should be. But I also can see the side, hey, there is going to be downtime. There is going to be situations where you can't provide DPS as a healer. You have a DPS rotation as a healer and you should use it. Otherwise, the game would still be, in my opinion, quite boring. Because what would you do during your downtime? Just sit there and scratch your ass? So I want to summarize this video, and it is an important topic because Blizzard is changing a lot of things in terms of how healing is being approached in Mythic Plus content. I think, or I can see the side of, I'm a poke healer, I only join pugs. I'm relatively scared to join poke situations right now because if people don't interrupt, if people don't use defensives and they die, they're going to flame me, because DPS and tanks, maybe they haven't realized fully about how many healing checks there are in dungeons. Healer is one of the most important role right now, which I think is a really good thing. I think the group success is directly linked to your healer, and a good healer is going to carry keys. I actually can't remember the last time that a healer was this important, and I really kind of enjoy that. I really do think that healers feel like they have to heal. Healers can carry groups, and if you have downtime, you can provide DPS. If you're playing a healer that heals through DPS, you're doing that anyways. Right now, I feel healers are going to be perceived as really strong, are going to be healers that provide a lot of burst healing, healers that provide a lot of sustain, aka Preservation Evoker, aka Restore Druid. All of those healers can provide really good healing, whether it's going to be burst healing or sustain. They provide good damage, and they also have decent amount of utility. I'm not saying other healers cannot do keys. They can absolutely do a good amount of keys, high keys and things like that. But there is a definitely definition of what makes a healer good right now in Season 1, and that is the healing output. Don't get me wrong, DPS for healers is important, but it's not on the same level as it was in Shadowlands. Shadowlands dungeons were very, very different from Dragonflight. Guys, how many Ruby Life Pool keys have you done? And how many have you depleted? Because that dungeon and certain other dungeons are almost stuff of nightmares, but you might enjoy that. So the whole summary of the video is that, hey, I really enjoyed that there is so much emphasis on healers. I don't really like the fact that every trash bag has 25 different interrupts, 25 different stuns, disease, or different dispels and things like that. I don't really enjoy that fully because you're at the mercy of the group. I don't mind having unavoidable damage in certain trash packs because that makes you do something as a healer and it makes you feel like a healer. I think healers should always provide damage regardless of what group you do, because you can always squeeze in a little bit of damage. I'm not saying you should go full DPS mode and let everyone die. I'm just there to heal. I'm never going to press my DPS buttons is wrong. And I think it's only good for the game that you have DPS rotation because it adds something for you to do during the downtime. I think it's only good for the game to have DPS buttons, but people tend to, how do I say, misinterpret the value of healer damage. Let me know how you enjoyed the Mythic Plus Season 1 keys. Let me know which dungeon you found to be the hardest. Let me know which healer you're playing right now and what is your experience. I want to see who's playing Resto Shaman, how are they dealing with some of the dungeons, who are playing Mistweaver Monks, who are playing Holy Priests, who are playing Discipline Priests, who are playing Holy Paladins. How are you enjoying the keys? How are you liking these healing checks? And what kind of keys are you doing right now? Again, I started off the first day doing like 13, 14 keys. They felt extremely hard without gear. We kind of jumped down or went down to 11s. It really depends on which tank you're playing, but I do think that tanks are still very, very powerful. I think, for example, if you're playing with a really good Prot Warrior, they're not going to take any damage. If you're playing with a really good Blood DK, they're spiking their damage from 10% to full HP, but usually they won't die. So you don't have to focus too much on them. So I do think that even in decently high keys, you don't have to focus too much on tanks, depending on the tank spec, depending on the tank's ability, but you have to focus on the rest of the party. The rest of the party are so squishy compared to the tank. It is insane. If you're doing a certain trashback pull and the healer is not there, it's usually going to mean that everyone is going to die except for the tank, and the tank might solo the trashback. Again, depending on which key you're doing and things like that. It is not, or this comment is not relevant for really, really high Mythic Plus keys. Let me know how you feel about this video. Let me know how you feel about everything that I said here. I really want to know your opinion about healer DPS and healer HPS checks. I'm happy that healers feel like healers. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video.